The blizzard had been howling outside Sarah Whitfield's cabin for 3 days straight, but the storm inside her heart had been raging for 6 months since they buried Thomas beneath the Montana earth. She stood at the frosted window of her small homestead just outside White Oaks, Montana, watching the snow pile higher against the fence posts that Thomas had set into the ground 2 summers ago. Christmas Eve of 1883 had arrived with bitter cold and bitter memories, and Sarah found herself completely alone for the first time since she was 18 years old. She was 28 now, a widow in a harsh land that did not forgive weakness or grief. The fire in the hearth crackled softly, but it brought no warmth to her bones. She had not bothered to prepare a proper meal, only some bread and weak coffee that sat untouched on the table. The cabin felt cavernous without Thomas's laughter, without his strong hands pulling her close in the evenings, without his voice reading scripture before bed. Everything she looked at reminded her of him. The chair he built, the table he sanded smooth, the bed frame he carved with their initials. Sarah pressed her forehead against the cold glass and let the tears come. She had tried to be strong for so long, maintaining the homestead alone through the autumn harvest, selling what she could in town, accepting charity from neighbors who pitied her but could spare little themselves. But tonight, on Christmas Eve, the loneliness crashed over her like a wave, and she felt herself drowning in it. She had no family left. Her parents had died of fever when she was 16. Thomas had been her whole world, and now that world was gone. The other homesteaders were kind enough, but they had their own families, their own struggles. No one came calling anymore except to check if she was still breathing. The wind screamed against the cabin walls, and Sarah wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. She had just turned back toward the fire when she heard it, a sound that did not belong to the storm, a rhythmic thumping against her door. She froze, fear prickling along her spine. No one traveled in weather like this. No one sane, anyway. The thumping came again, more insistent this time, followed by a man's voice, muffled but urgent. "Please, is anyone there? I need help." Sarah's heart hammered as she approached the door. She had no weapon close at hand, nothing but a fire poker. But something in the desperation of that voice made her slide the bolt back and pull the door open against the force of the wind. A man practically fell through the doorway, bringing a rush of snow and freezing air with him. Sarah stumbled back as he caught himself against the door frame, his whole body shaking violently. He was covered head to toe in snow, ice clinging to his dark beard and eyebrows. His hat was pulled low, and a heavy coat hung stiff and frozen on his broad frame. "Thank God," he managed through chattering teeth. "I thought I was done for." Sarah quickly shut the door against the storm, her fear temporarily overcome by basic human decency. The man was clearly in danger of freezing to death. She could see his fingers were white where they gripped his coat, and his lips had a blue tinge to them. "Get to the fire," she said, her voice hoarse from disuse. "Quickly now." The man stumbled toward the hearth, his movements clumsy and slow. Sarah helped guide him, feeling the cold radiating off him in waves. He collapsed onto the rug in front of the fire, still shaking uncontrollably. "We need to get this coat off you," Sarah said, moving with sudden purpose. She had seen frostbite before, knew what needed to be done. "Can you move your fingers?" "Barely," he said through clenched teeth. Sarah worked at the buttons of his coat with shaking hands. The fabric was frozen stiff, making it difficult to manage. Finally, she got it open and helped him shrug out of it, tossing the heavy garment aside. His shirt underneath was damp with sweat and snow melt. "Not good." "The shirt too," she said. "You need dry clothes." The man nodded, too cold to argue about modesty. Sarah turned away to give him privacy while she hurried to the trunk where she still kept Thomas's clothes. She had not been able to part with them, and now she was grateful. She pulled out a thick flannel shirt and wool pants, along with dry socks. When she turned back, the man had managed to remove his wet shirt. In the firelight, she could see he was younger than she had first thought, perhaps 30 or 31. He had dark hair that curled slightly when wet, and strong shoulders marked with old scars. His face was lean and handsome despite the exhaustion etched into it. He looked up at her with eyes the color of whiskey, and something in Sarah's chest tightened unexpectedly. "Thank you," he said simply. She handed him the dry clothes and turned away again, busying herself with stoking the fire and putting a kettle on to boil. Behind her, she heard him struggling into the dry garments. "My name is Isaac Thornton," he said after a moment. "I was trying to make it to town before the storm got worse, but my horse threw a shoe about 2 miles back. I had to leave him sheltered in a grove of trees. Hoped I could find help before I froze." "You nearly did freeze," Sarah said, keeping her back to him. "Another hour out there and you would have been dead. I know it. I owe you my life, miss." "Mrs.," Sarah corrected quietly. "Sarah Whitfield, and you owe me nothing. Common decency demands helping someone in need." She finally turned back around. Isaac was dressed in Thomas's clothes now, the shirt a bit tight across his broader chest, but dry and warm. He was still shivering, but not as violently as before. He had moved closer to the fire and was holding his hands out to the flames. "Your husband home?" Isaac asked, glancing around the small cabin. Sarah felt her throat tighten. "He passed 6 months ago." "I am sorry," Isaac said, and something in his tone told her he meant it. "That must be hard, especially at Christmas." Sarah turned away quickly, not wanting him to see the tears that threatened. "I will make coffee. You should drink something warm." She busied herself with the kettle, measuring out coffee grounds with trembling hands. She had not spoken Thomas's name aloud to anyone in weeks, had not acknowledged his death except in the privacy of her own grief. Having a stranger here in her home, wearing Thomas's clothes, felt both intrusive and oddly comforting. "How long has the storm been going?" Isaac asked after a moment. 3 days now," Sarah replied, pouring hot water over the grounds. "Worst I have seen in the 2 years I have been in Montana. You are not from here originally, Kansas. Thomas and I came west looking for land for a new start." She stirred the coffee, watching it darken. "We thought we could make a life here. I am sorry it turned out differently." Sarah brought 2 cups to the fire and handed one to Isaac. He took it gratefully, wrapping both hands around the warm tin. She sat down in Thomas's old chair, suddenly exhausted. They drank in silence for a few moments, the only sound the crackling fire and the howling wind outside. Sarah studied Isaac over the rim of her cup. He looked like he had been traveling hard. His face was weathered and tired, but there was a gentleness in his eyes that surprised her. "Where were you heading?" she asked finally. "Before the storm." "White Oaks," Isaac said. "I heard they might need a foreman at the Patterson Ranch. I have been working cattle down in Wyoming, but the outfit I was with disbanded for the winter. Thought I would try my luck up here." "Patterson's a good man," Sarah said. "Fair employer from what I hear." "That is what I am hoping." Isaac took another sip of coffee. "I am tired of drifting, would like to find a place to settle for a while." Sarah understood that feeling, the desire for roots, for permanence. She and Thomas had wanted the same thing. They had found it briefly before death took it all away. "You can stay here until the storm passes," she heard herself say. "It would be wrong to send you back out in that." Isaac looked at her with gratitude and something else she could not quite name. "I do not want to impose, especially not tonight. Christmas Eve should be for family." "I have no family," Sarah said quietly, "and you will die if you go back out there. It is settled." Isaac nodded slowly. "Then I am grateful, Mrs. Whitfield, more grateful than I can say." They finished their coffee in companionable silence. Sarah found herself relaxing slightly, the terrible loneliness that had threatened to consume her earlier receding just a bit. There was something steadying about Isaac's presence. He was quiet without being awkward, respectful without being distant. "Are you hungry?" she asked after a while. "I have not prepared much, but there is bread and some preserved meat. I do not want to take your food." "I was not eating it anyway," Sarah said honestly. "Please, let me at least feed you after you nearly froze to death." Isaac smiled then, a slow, warm smile that transformed his face. "When you put it that way, how can I refuse?" Sarah rose and moved to the cupboard, pulling out what little she had. Bread, some dried venison, a bit of cheese she had been saving. She arranged it on a plate and brought it to the small table. Isaac stood and joined her, lowering himself carefully into the chair across from hers. As they ate, Sarah found herself talking more than she had in months. Isaac had a way of asking questions that did not feel intrusive, that made her want to share. She told him about Kansas, about her parents' death, about meeting Thomas at a church social when she was 17. She told him about their dreams of the West, about the hard journey to Montana, about building this cabin with their own hands. Isaac listened intently, his amber eyes never leaving her face. When she finally fell silent, he reached across the table and gently touched her hand. "He sounds like he was a good man," Isaac said softly. "You were lucky to have each other, even if it was not long enough." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes again, but this time they were not entirely sad. "Yes, we were lucky. How did he die, if you do not mind me asking?" Sarah took a shaky breath. "An accident. He was helping a neighbor repair a barn roof. A beam gave way. He fell and hit his head. He was gone before the doctor could even arrive." "That is terrible," Isaac said, his hand still covering hers. "I am so sorry, Sarah." It was the first time he had used her given name, and something about it made her heart skip. She looked down at their hands, his large and calloused and warm over her small, cold one. "I have not known what to do since," she admitted. "The neighbors have been kind, but I cannot keep accepting charity. I cannot work the land alone, not really. I have been thinking I might have to sell and move back east, but I have nothing there either." "That is a hard choice to face," Isaac said, "especially alone." Sarah nodded, blinking back tears. "I am sorry. I should not burden you with all this. You are a stranger." "Sometimes strangers are the easiest people to talk to," Isaac said gently. He squeezed her hand once and then withdrew his own. "And you saved my life tonight. The least I can do is listen." They talked long into the night. Isaac told her about his own life, about growing up in Texas, about losing his parents to cholera when he was 20. He had been drifting ever since, working ranches across the West, never staying anywhere long enough to call it home. He had never married, never found the right person, never felt settled enough to try. "I used to think I liked the freedom," he said, staring into the fire, "but lately it just feels lonely." Sarah understood that too, the loneliness that came from having no place, no person, no purpose. They were both adrift in their own ways, two souls caught in storms they could not control. Eventually, exhaustion caught up with both of them. Sarah gave Isaac several blankets and a pillow, insisting he take the spot closest to the fire. She would sleep in the bed in the small alcove, separated by a curtain Thomas had hung for privacy. As she lay in the darkness, listening to the storm rage outside and Isaac's steady breathing by the fire, Sarah felt something shift inside her. The terrible crushing loneliness had lifted just a bit. For the first time in 6 months, she did not feel completely alone. She woke on Christmas morning to the smell of coffee brewing. For a confused moment, she thought Thomas was up and making breakfast like he used to do on special occasions. Then reality crashed back and she remembered the storm, the stranger, everything that had happened the night before. Sarah pulled on her dressing gown and pushed back the curtain. Isaac was crouched by the fire, tending the coffee pot. He had clearly been up for a while. The fire was built up bright and warm, and he had brought in more wood from the covered pile outside. He looked up when he heard her and smiled. "Morning. Merry Christmas." Sarah had forgotten it was Christmas. The day had lost all meaning when Thomas died. But something about Isaac's gentle greeting made her heart lift just a little. "Merry Christmas," she said softly. "You did not have to do all this." "I wanted to," Isaac said. "You have done so much for me. It is the least I could do." He poured 2 cups of coffee and brought one to her. "The storm has not let up any. Looks like I will be imposing on your hospitality a while longer if you will have me." "Of course," Sarah said, taking the cup gratefully. The coffee was strong and hot, exactly what she needed. "I would not send anyone out in that." They had a simple breakfast of oatmeal and the last of the bread. As they ate, Sarah found herself watching Isaac. He moved with easy competence, clearly a man used to taking care of himself. But there was also a gentleness to him, a kindness in the way he spoke and acted that made her feel safe. After breakfast, Isaac insisted on helping with the chores. He went out to the small barn and tended to Sarah's 2 cows and handful of chickens, returning with fresh milk and eggs. The wind and snow were so fierce he came back looking like a snowman, but he was grinning. "That is quite a storm," he said, stomping snow off his boots. "I have not seen the like in years." "Thomas always said Montana winters were not for the faint of heart," Sarah said. They spent the rest of the morning doing small tasks around the cabin. Isaac fixed a loose hinge on the cupboard door, patched a draft coming from under the window, checked the chimney to make sure it was drawing properly. Sarah mended some clothes and prepared a better meal than she had bothered with in weeks. Having someone to cook for made the work feel worthwhile. As she worked, she could not help but notice how natural it felt to have Isaac there. How easy it was to move around each other in the small space, how comfortable the silences were. It frightened her a little, how quickly she had grown accustomed to his presence. By afternoon, they were both restless from being cooped up inside. The storm showed no signs of letting up, but Isaac suggested they make the best of it. He found Thomas's old deck of cards and taught Sarah several games she had never played before. They played for matchsticks, and Sarah found herself laughing for the first time in months as Isaac told stories about his travels, making funny faces and voices for the various characters he had met. "So there I was," he said, laying down his cards with a flourish, facing down this gambler in Abilene who was convinced I had been cheating. I had not, mind you, I am just lucky at cards sometimes. But he was a big fellow, and he had a bigger gun, and I thought for sure I was about to meet my maker." "What happened?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. "His wife walked in," Isaac said with a grin. "Took one look at him making a scene and grabbed him by the ear. Dragged him right out of that saloon while everyone laughed. I have never been so grateful for an angry wife in my life." Sarah laughed, really laughed, and it felt wonderful and terrible at the same time. Wonderful because she had forgotten what joy felt like. Terrible because she felt guilty for experiencing it without Thomas. Isaac must have seen the shift in her expression because his own smile faded. "I am sorry," he said gently. "I did not mean to make you sad." "You did not," Sarah said quickly. I forgot for a moment that he was gone. And then I remembered and I felt guilty for forgetting." Isaac reached across the table and took her hand again. It was becoming a familiar gesture, and Sarah found she did not mind. In fact, she drew comfort from it. "He would want you to laugh," Isaac said softly. "He would want you to find joy again. I did not know him, but from everything you have told me, he loved you too much to want you to suffer forever." Sarah felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I know you are right, but it feels like a betrayal somehow." "It is not," Isaac said firmly. "Grief is not a measure of love. You can miss him and still live. You can honor his memory and still find happiness. Those things are not at odds with each other." Sarah looked at him through her tears. "When did you become so wise?" "I've had a lot of time to think during lonely nights on the trail," Isaac said. "Lost people I cared about too. It took me a long time to understand that living is not the same as forgetting." They sat there for a long moment, hands clasped across the table, the wind howling outside. Sarah felt something crack open inside her chest, something that had been locked tight since Thomas died. It was not that she was letting go of her grief, but maybe, just maybe, she was making room for something else alongside it. That evening, Sarah prepared a real Christmas supper. She had been saving a ham for a special occasion that never seemed to come, and she decided tonight was as special as any. She boiled potatoes and made gravy, baked biscuits from her precious store of flour. Isaac helped where he could, peeling potatoes and setting the table with the nice dishes Sarah had packed away months ago. When the meal was ready, they sat down together in the warm glow of the firelight. It felt almost like a real Christmas, Sarah thought. Almost like the one she had dreamed of having with Thomas. The ache was still there, but it was softer now, not quite so sharp. "Should we say grace?" Isaac asked. Sarah nodded, and they bowed their heads. Isaac's voice was low and sincere as he thanked God for the food, for shelter from the storm, for bringing them together on this night. When he finished, Sarah added her own quiet prayer of thanks for not being alone. The meal was delicious, better than anything Sarah had tasted in months. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, talking and laughing. Isaac told more stories, and Sarah found herself sharing memories of Thomas that made her smile instead of cry. Good memories of their courtship, of their early days in Montana, of small moments of happiness they had shared. "He sounds like he was quite the dancer," Isaac said after Sarah told a story about Thomas trying to waltz with her at a town social and stepping on her toes repeatedly. "He was terrible at it," Sarah said with a laugh. "But he tried so hard. He always tried so hard at everything." "That is a good quality in a man," Isaac said. "Trying matters more than succeeding sometimes." After supper, they cleared the dishes together and Sarah made coffee. They sat by the fire, content and full, listening to the storm continue its assault on the little cabin. "Thank you," Sarah said after a while, "for today, for making Christmas feel like Christmas again." "Thank you for letting me stay," Isaac replied. "I cannot imagine a better place to be stranded." They talked late into the night again, but this time the conversation turned more personal. Isaac asked about her dreams, about what she wanted from life now that everything had changed. Sarah found herself admitting things she had barely acknowledged to herself. "I do not want to leave Montana," she said. "I feel close to Thomas here, like part of him is in this land. But I do not know if I can keep the homestead alone. I do not know if I am strong enough." "You are stronger than you think," Isaac said. "You survived his death. You made it through 6 months alone. You saved a stranger's life in a blizzard. Those are not the actions of a weak woman, Sarah." Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. "Maybe, but strength does not pay bills or plow fields." "No," Isaac agreed. "But there are solutions if you want to find them. You could hire help come spring, or you could lease part of the land to another homesteader. Or," he hesitated, "or you could find a partner, someone to help share the burden." Sarah looked at him sharply, but Isaac's expression was carefully neutral. "I am not ready for that," she said quietly. "I do not know if I ever will be." "I am not suggesting you rush into anything," Isaac said gently. I am just saying, do not close yourself off to all possibilities because of grief. When the time is right, if the time is ever right, you will know." They fell silent again, both staring into the fire. Sarah wondered what Isaac was thinking, if he was regretting his words. But when she glanced at him, he looked peaceful, his strong profile outlined in firelight. "What about you?" she asked. "What do you want, Isaac? Really want, not just what you have convinced yourself you should want." Isaac was quiet for a long moment. "I want what you had," he said finally. "A home, someone to come home to, a reason to put down roots and stop drifting. I want to matter to someone, to have someone matter to me. I am tired of being alone." His honesty touched something deep inside Sarah. She understood that longing, that ache for connection. She had lost it when Thomas died, but Isaac had never had it at all. In some ways, his loneliness was even more profound than hers. "You will find it," she said softly. "Someone like you, good and kind and strong, you will find your place." Isaac turned to look at her, his amber eyes intense in the flickering light. "Maybe I already have." Sarah's breath caught. She knew what he was saying, what he was suggesting. Part of her wanted to retreat, to hide behind her grief and her fear. But another part of her, a part she thought had died with Thomas, yearned toward Isaac like a flower toward the sun. "Isaac," she whispered, "I cannot." "I know," he said quickly. "I know it is too soon. I know I am a stranger who stumbled into your life during a storm. I am not asking for anything, Sarah. I am just telling you the truth. From the moment you opened that door, something changed for me. I feel like I have been searching my whole life, and I finally found what I was looking for." Tears streamed down Sarah's face now. "I am not ready. I do not know if I can feel that way again about anyone." "I am not asking you to," Isaac said. He reached out and gently wiped her tears away with his thumb. "I am not asking you for anything except to let me stay when the storm clears. Let me work for you, help you keep the homestead. I will take no pay except room and board. I will ask nothing of you except your company. And maybe, in time, you will heal enough to see if there could be something more. And if not, if you never feel that way, I will still be grateful just to be near you." Sarah could not speak. The offer was so generous, so pure that it broke her heart. Isaac was offering her everything she needed with no demands, no expectations. He was offering her time and space to grieve, to heal, to slowly find her way back to life. "Why?" she finally managed. "Why would you do that for someone you barely know?" Isaac smiled, sad and sweet. "Because sometimes you meet someone and you just know. You know they are important. You know they are meant to be in your life. I cannot explain it any better than that. I just know that meeting you was not an accident. This storm brought me here for a reason." Sarah closed her eyes, overwhelmed. She wanted to say yes. She wanted to accept his offer, to let him stay, to give herself a chance at something she could not even name yet. But fear held her back. Fear of betraying Thomas's memory. Fear of opening her heart only to have it broken again. Fear of change, of the unknown, of hope itself. "I need time to think," she whispered. "Take all the time you need," Isaac said. "The storm is not going anywhere, and neither am I." They sat together in silence for a while longer before finally retiring to their separate sleeping places. Sarah lay awake in the darkness for hours, her mind spinning. Everything felt too fast, too intense. Isaac was a stranger. She had known him for barely a day. How could she trust these feelings, this pull she felt toward him? But deep down, she knew the answer. She trusted it because it was real. Because despite the short time, despite the impossible circumstances, Isaac had reached something inside her that she thought was dead forever. He had made her laugh. He had made her hope. He had made her want to live again instead of just existing. The storm raged on for 2 more days. During that time, Sarah and Isaac fell into an easy routine. They cooked together, worked together, talked for hours about everything and nothing. Isaac never pushed, never brought up his proposal again. He was simply present, steady and kind and patient. Sarah found herself watching him when he was not looking. The way he moved, confident and capable. The way he smiled, warm and genuine. The way he looked at her, like she was something precious and rare. It had been so long since someone looked at her that way. On the third day, the storm finally broke. They woke to silence, the absence of wind so stark it was almost jarring. When Sarah pulled back the curtain to look outside, she gasped. The world was transformed into a pristine white wonderland. Snowdrifts reached halfway up the cabin walls and everything sparkled in the bright morning sun. "It is beautiful," Isaac said from behind her. "Yes," Sarah agreed. "But you will never be able to get to town. The roads will be impassable for days." "I am not in a hurry," Isaac said. "If you will have me, I will stay and help dig out. You cannot do it alone." Sarah turned to face him. She had made her decision sometime during the long, sleepless hours of the previous night. "I want you to stay, not just until the road's clear. I want to accept your offer if it still stands." Isaac's face lit up with such joy that Sarah felt her own heart lift. "It stands. It will always stand." "There have to be rules," Sarah said quickly before she could lose her nerve. "You will sleep out here and I will have my privacy. You will work the land and I will keep the house. We will be employer and employee, nothing more. Not yet. Maybe not ever. I need you to understand that." "I understand," Isaac said seriously. "I will respect your boundaries, Sarah. You have my word." They shook hands formally, sealing the agreement. But the moment their palms touched, Sarah felt a jolt of electricity run through her. From the way Isaac's eyes widened, she knew he felt it too. The next few weeks were busy ones. They dug out from the storm, repaired damage to the barn, tended the animals. Isaac proved to be a hard worker, capable and strong. He fixed things around the homestead that Sarah had not even realized were broken. He reinforced the fence line, repaired the barn roof, chopped enough wood to last through the rest of winter. In the evenings, they fell into the habit of sitting by the fire together. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they played cards. Sometimes Isaac read aloud from the Bible or from the few books Sarah owned. His voice was soothing, and Sarah found herself looking forward to these quiet hours more than anything else in her day. As January turned into February, Sarah felt herself slowly coming back to life. The crushing grief was still there, but it had become something she carried rather than something that carried her. She still thought of Thomas every day, still missed him terribly. But she also found herself thinking about the future in a way she had not since his death. Isaac never pushed for more than she was willing to give. He was patient and respectful, always maintaining proper distance. But Sarah could not help but notice the way his eyes followed her when he thought she was not looking. Could not help but feel the tension that sparked between them whenever they accidentally touched. Could not help but wonder what it would be like to let herself care for him the way she was beginning to suspect she already did. One evening in late February, after a particularly long day of work, they sat by the fire as usual. Isaac had been teaching Sarah a new card game, but she was distracted, her mind elsewhere. "You are quiet tonight," Isaac observed, laying down his cards. "Is something wrong?" Sarah hesitated. She had been working up the courage to say something for days now, and she thought maybe tonight was the night. "Isaac, can I ask you something? Anything? Do you ever regret staying? Do you wish you had gone on to White Oaks, tried for that foreman job?" Isaac looked at her seriously. "Not for a single moment. This is exactly where I want to be. But you are working for no pay, living in a tiny cabin, helping a grieving widow who cannot promise you anything. Surely there are better opportunities out there for you." Isaac set down his cards and moved closer, not quite touching but near enough that Sarah could feel the warmth of him. "There is nowhere else I would rather be and nothing else I would rather be doing. You are not a burden, Sarah. You are a gift. These past 2 months have been the happiest of my life." Sarah felt tears prick her eyes. "How can you say that? We barely know each other." "I know you," Isaac said softly. "I know you are strong and brave. I know you are kind to your core. I know you have a laugh that sounds like music and a smile that lights up the whole room. I know you love deeply and grieve deeply and feel everything with your whole heart. I know you are loyal and hardworking and determined. What else do I need to know?" "You make me sound better than I am," Sarah whispered. "I make you sound exactly as you are," Isaac replied. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I am falling in love with you, Sarah. I have been since Christmas night. I know it is too soon for you. I know I should not say it, but I cannot keep pretending I do not feel it." Sarah's breath caught. She had known, of course. She had seen it in his eyes, felt it in every kind gesture and gentle word. But hearing him say it aloud made it real in a way that terrified and thrilled her. "I do not know what to say," she admitted. "You do not have to say anything," Isaac said. "I am not asking for anything in return. I just wanted you to know the truth. I love you. And whether or not you ever love me back, that will not change. I am here for as long as you will have me." Sarah looked into his warm, amber eyes and felt something break loose inside her, something she had been holding on to tightly since Thomas died. It was permission. Permission to move forward. Permission to feel something new without erasing what came before. Permission to be happy again. "I am scared," she whispered. "I know. I still love him. I will always love him." "I know that too," Isaac said gently. "I am not trying to replace him, Sarah. I could never do that. I am just hoping there might be room in your heart for something new alongside what you already carry." Sarah felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I think there might be. I think there already is. I am just so afraid of what that means." Isaac brushed her tears away with his thumb, his touch infinitely tender. "It means you are alive. It means you are healing. It means you are brave enough to risk your heart again. Those are all good things, Sarah." "When did this happen?" Sarah asked with a shaky laugh. "When did I start caring for you so much?" "I could not say," Isaac replied, smiling. "For me it was immediate, but you take all the time you need. There is no rush." But Sarah realized she did not want to wait anymore. She had been so afraid of betraying Thomas's memory, of moving on too quickly, of making a mistake. But looking at Isaac now, seeing the love and patience and kindness in his eyes, she knew this was not a mistake. This was a gift, a second chance at happiness that she never thought she would get. "Kiss me," she whispered. Isaac's eyes widened. "Sarah, are you sure?" "No," she admitted. "But I think I want to be." Isaac smiled, slow and sweet, and leaned in carefully. He cupped her face in his rough, gentle hands and pressed his lips to hers so softly it was barely there. Sarah felt electricity shoot through her whole body. It was different from kissing Thomas. Isaac was different, but that was okay. She was different too. She leaned into the kiss, letting herself feel it, letting herself want it. Isaac made a soft sound and deepened the kiss slightly, still gentle, still careful. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathing hard. "I am not ready for more than this," Sarah said quickly. "Not yet." "Then this is enough," Isaac said. "This is more than enough." They sat together by the fire, Sarah's head on Isaac's shoulder, his arm around her. It felt right in a way Sarah had not expected. She still missed Thomas. She probably always would, but she was beginning to understand that the heart was big enough for all of it. Grief and love, past and present, memory and hope. Spring came slowly to Montana, but when it finally arrived, it brought new life to the homestead. With Isaac's help, Sarah was able to plant a larger garden than she ever had before. They repaired the chicken coop and added more hens. Isaac talked to some of the neighbors about buying a few head of cattle to start a small herd. Word had gotten around that Sarah had a hired hand, and the gossip in town was predictably vicious. A young widow and an unmarried man living under the same roof was scandalous in the eyes of many. But Sarah found she did not care as much as she thought she would. The people whose opinions mattered to her understood that Isaac was a good man, and their arrangement was proper. Mrs. Patterson from the neighboring ranch came calling one afternoon in April. She was a formidable woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a kind heart. She took tea with Sarah while Isaac worked on reinforcing the barn. "People are talking," Mrs. Patterson said bluntly. "You know that, do you not?" "I know," Sarah said calmly. "Let them talk." "He is a good man, that Isaac," Mrs. Patterson continued. "My husband checked around. He worked for the Jameson outfit down in Wyoming. They said he was the best hand they ever had, honest and hardworking. Said they were sorry to lose him when they disbanded for winter." Sarah felt relief wash over her. She had trusted her instincts about Isaac, but it was good to have them confirmed. "He has been a blessing to me." Mrs. Patterson fixed her with a knowing look. "Is that all he is? A blessing?" Sarah felt her cheeks heat. "I do not know what you mean." "I think you do, dear. I see the way you look at each other. There is nothing wrong with finding happiness again, you know. Thomas has been gone almost a year now. You are young. You should not spend the rest of your life alone." "People would say it is too soon," Sarah said quietly. "People will always have something to say," Mrs. Patterson replied. "The question is, what do you say? What do you want, Sarah?" Sarah looked out the window at Isaac. He had stripped down to his shirt sleeves in the warm spring air, and she could see the flex of his muscles as he worked. Her heart gave a familiar flutter that she had come to recognize over the past few months. "I want to be happy again," Sarah admitted. "I want to build a life that honors Thomas's memory but does not stop with his death. I want to give Isaac a real home, a real future. I want to stop being afraid." "Then stop," Mrs. Patterson said simply. "Marry the man. Give him your name and your hand and make an honest living together. There is no shame in it." After Mrs. Patterson left, Sarah thought long and hard about their conversation. Marriage. She had not let herself think that far ahead, even though she knew Isaac would ask eventually. Was she ready? Could she really pledge herself to another man after Thomas? That night, as they sat by the fire, Sarah broached the subject. "Isaac, what are your intentions toward me? Long term, I mean." Isaac looked at her steadily. "I intend to love you for the rest of my life. Whether we marry or you keep me on as a hired hand or something in between, that will not change." "But you want to marry me, more than anything," Isaac said honestly, "but only if and when you are ready." Sarah took a deep breath. "I think I am ready, or close to ready, but I need you to understand something first. Anything. I loved Thomas with everything I had. He was my first love, my first everything. Part of me will always belong to him. If we marry, if we build a life together, his memory will be part of it. I need to know you can accept that." Isaac moved closer and took both her hands in his. "Sarah, I would never ask you to forget him or stop loving him. He shaped who you are. He brought you to Montana. In a way, he is part of what brought us together. I am grateful for the time you had with him, even though I am sorry it was cut short. His memory is welcome in our home, in our lives, always." Sarah felt tears stream down her face. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "We found each other," Isaac corrected gently. "Through a blizzard and a miracle." "Will you marry me, Isaac Thornton?" Sarah asked, her voice shaking with emotion. "Will you make this place a home and give me a future I can look forward to?" Isaac's face split into the biggest smile Sarah had ever seen. "Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, with all the pent-up passion of months of restraint. Sarah kissed him back just as fiercely, letting herself feel the full force of her love for this good, patient, wonderful man. They were married in May, a simple ceremony at the small church in White Oaks. Mrs. Patterson and her husband stood up as witnesses, and several of the other homesteaders attended. Sarah wore her best dress, and Isaac wore a new suit he had purchased with money from selling some of the cattle they had raised. It was not a grand affair, but it was perfect. As they exchanged vows, Sarah felt Thomas's presence like a warm breeze. She knew somehow that he approved, that he wanted her to be happy, that he was glad she had found Isaac. The wedding night was sweet and tender, Isaac careful and patient with Sarah as she navigated the strangeness of being intimate with someone new. He took his time, making sure she felt safe and loved and cherished. Afterward, as they lay tangled together in the darkness, Sarah felt truly at peace for the first time since Thomas died. "I love you," she whispered into Isaac's chest. "I love you too," he replied, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Thank you for taking a chance on a stranger in a snowstorm." Sarah laughed softly. "Thank you for knocking on my door and bringing light back into my life. The years that followed were good ones. The homestead prospered under their joint management. They expanded the cattle operation and became known throughout the territory for their quality stock. They built a bigger house to replace the tiny cabin, though Sarah insisted they keep the cabin standing as a guest house, as a reminder of where their love began. In the spring of 1885, Sarah gave birth to their first child, a son they named Thomas Isaac Thornton. He had his mother's dark hair and his father's amber eyes, and both Sarah and Isaac adored him fiercely. Sarah had worried that having children with Isaac might feel like a betrayal of the children she had wanted with Thomas, but instead it felt like a continuation. Like honoring the dream even if the partner had changed. 2 years later they welcomed a daughter, Emma Grace, who had her father's dark curls and her mother's gentle spirit. And 2 years after that, another son, James William, who was all mischief and energy from the day he was born. The house was always full of laughter and noise, so different from the silent grief that had filled the cabin that terrible Christmas 7 years ago. Sarah sometimes stood at the window, watching Isaac play with their children in the yard, and marveled at how much her life had changed. She never forgot Thomas. His memory was woven into the fabric of their lives. They visited his grave every year on the anniversary of his death, and Sarah told the children stories about the man who had helped build their home, who had loved their mother first. Isaac never seemed threatened by it. He understood that the past was not competing with the present, and the children grew up understanding that love was big enough for all of them. When Thomas Isaac was 10, he asked his mother about his namesake. They were sitting on the porch watching the sunset, just the two of them. "Do you miss him?" the boy asked. "Your first husband," Sarah thought about how to answer. "I do, I always will. He was important to me, and losing him was one of the hardest things I have ever been through." "But you love Papa very much," Sarah said firmly. "More than I can say. Your father saved me in more ways than one. He gave me a reason to keep going when I wanted to give up. He gave me all of you. I am grateful every day that he stumbled through a blizzard and knocked on my door. You think Thomas would be mad that you married Papa?" Sarah pulled her son close. "No, sweetheart. I think he would be happy. I think he would want me to live a full life, to find love again, to have you and your brother and sister. Love does not run out, you know. There is always room for more." The boy seemed satisfied with that answer, and they sat together in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink. As the years passed, The Thornton Ranch became one of the most successful in the territory. Isaac proved to have a gift for breeding cattle, and their stock was sought after across Montana and into Wyoming. They hired several hands to help with the work, and the original homestead grew into a substantial operation. Sarah became known in the community as a woman of strength and compassion. She helped other widows, understanding their grief and isolation. She organized the Ladies' Aid Society at the church. She taught several young women to read and write. She was respected and loved, no longer the pitied young widow but a pillar of the community. Isaac served on the town council and helped establish a school in White Oaks. He was known as a fair man, honest in his dealings and generous with those less fortunate. He never forgot what it felt like to be a drifter with nothing, and he made sure to give opportunities to young men who reminded him of his younger self. Their marriage only grew stronger with time. They had their disagreements, of course. No marriage was perfect. But they had built a foundation of friendship and respect that weathered every storm. They still sat by the fire together in the evenings, talking and laughing. They still looked at each other with love and desire even after years together. They still made each other happy. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Isaac surprised Sarah with a trip back to Kansas to visit her parents' graves. It was a long journey, but Sarah was deeply touched that he understood how much it would mean to her. They stood together at the small cemetery, Sarah's hand in Isaac's, and she told him stories about her childhood, about her parents, about the girl she had been before grief and loss and love shaped her into the woman she became. "I wish they could have met you," she said, leaning against his shoulder. "They would have loved you." "I wish I could have met them too," Isaac replied. "And Thomas, I wish I could have known all the people who made you who you are." They visited the church where Sarah and Thomas had been married, and Sarah felt the familiar ache in her chest. But it was a gentle ache now, not the crushing pain it once was. She could remember without being swallowed by grief. She could honor the past without being trapped in it. Back in Montana, life continued its steady rhythm. The children grew older, taking on more responsibilities around the ranch. Thomas Isaac inherited his father's way with horses and cattle. Emma Grace showed an artistic streak, always drawing and painting the beautiful Montana landscape. James William was the most social of the three, always bringing home stray animals and people who needed help, just like his parents. When Sarah turned 40, she and Isaac stood together on the porch of their home, watching their children work in the fields below. The original cabin stood nearby, well-maintained, a monument to where their story began. "You remember that Christmas?" Sarah asked, leaning into Isaac's embrace. "Every detail," Isaac replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Best storm I ever got caught in." "I was so lost that night," Sarah said softly, "so completely broken, I did not think I would ever feel whole again. And now," Sarah turned to look at her husband, at the man who had brought light back into her darkness. His dark hair was starting to gray at the temples, and there were lines around his eyes from years of squinting into the Montana sun. But to her, he was just as handsome as the frozen stranger who had stumbled through her door 12 years ago. "Now I am whole," she said. "Different than I was before, but whole. You did that, Isaac. You and our children and this life we built together. You healed me without asking me to forget. You loved me without demanding I stop grieving. You gave me everything I needed to find myself again." Isaac cupped her face in his hands, his touch still sending shivers through her after all these years. "You healed yourself, Sarah. I just had the privilege of being there while you did it. You are the strongest person I know." They kissed there on the porch, the Montana sunset painting the sky behind them, their children's laughter floating up from the fields. It was a perfect moment in an imperfect life, and Sarah treasured it. That night, after the children were asleep, Sarah and Isaac walked hand in hand to the old cabin. They had kept the interior much as it was that Christmas, though cleaner and better maintained. It had become a sort of shrine to their beginning, a place they visited when they wanted to remember. They sat on the floor in front of the hearth, just as they had 12 years ago, and Sarah felt the weight of memory settle around them like a blanket. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "What is it?" "I have been thinking about all those years ago, about Thomas, and about you, and about everything that happened. And I realize now that I do not feel guilty anymore for loving you. For a long time, I carried that guilt, like loving you meant I had not loved him enough. But I understand now that it does not work that way." Isaac squeezed her hand. "I am glad you can see that. Thomas was my first love and you are my second. Both are true, both are real, both are complete. I do not love you less because I loved him. I do not love him less because I love you. The heart is big enough for all of it." "Yes, it is," Isaac agreed softly. "I want our children to understand that," Sarah continued. "I want them to know that love is not finite, that you can lose people and still go on, that you can honor the past without being trapped by it, that you can open your heart again even after it has been broken." "They already know it," Isaac said. "They see it in us every day." Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder, staring into the empty hearth. "Do you think he knows, Thomas? Do you think he knows how happy I am?" "I think if there is any justice in heaven, he knows and he is glad," Isaac replied. "I think he sent that storm to bring me to your door. I think he wanted you to be cared for, to be loved, to have the life you deserved." "You really believe that?" "I believe that something beyond coincidence brought us together," Isaac said. "Whether it was God or fate or Thomas himself, I am grateful for it every single day." They sat together in the quiet cabin, surrounded by memories and love. Eventually they returned to the main house, to their bedroom, to the comfortable bed they shared. As Sarah drifted off to sleep in Isaac's arms, she thought about how strange and beautiful life was, how loss and love could exist side by side, how endings could become beginnings, how a knock on the door during a Christmas blizzard could change everything. The years continued to pass peacefully. The children grew into fine young adults. Thomas Isaac married a girl from White Oaks and built a house on the far corner of the property, continuing the family tradition of ranching. Emma Grace surprised everyone by becoming a teacher, using her artistic talents to inspire her students. James William followed his father onto the town council and became a voice for progress and fairness in the growing community. Sarah and Isaac became grandparents, then great-grandparents. The family gatherings were loud and joyous, the house always full of children and laughter. Every Christmas, without fail, the entire family gathered at the main house. They would have a feast, exchange gifts, tell stories. And every Christmas Eve, Sarah and Isaac would slip away to the old cabin, just the two of them, and remember that first night. When Sarah was 65, she fell ill with pneumonia. It was touch and go for a while, and Isaac barely left her bedside. Their children and grandchildren came to visit, filling the house with worry and love. But Sarah was strong, just as she had always been, and she pulled through. As she recovered, lying in bed with Isaac holding her hand, Sarah reflected on her life. She had lived through tremendous loss and tremendous joy. She had known the depths of grief and the heights of love. She had built a family and a legacy that would outlast her. She had lived a full life, rich with meaning and purpose. No regrets. Isaac asked one afternoon as she sat propped up in bed, finally strong enough to stay awake for long periods. "Not a one," Sarah said firmly. "Well, maybe one. I wish I had more time, but I suppose everyone wishes that." "You are not going anywhere," Isaac said fiercely. You are going to recover, and we are going to have many more years together." And they did. Sarah recovered fully, and they had nearly 10 more years together. They watched their family continue to grow and thrive. They celebrated their 25th wedding anniversary with a huge party that brought together people from all over the territory. They grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. Isaac died first, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 78. Sarah held his hand as he passed, whispering that she loved him, that she would see him again, that he had given her the most wonderful life. The grief was profound but different than when Thomas died. She had had time to prepare. She had had decades with Isaac. She had no regrets. Sarah lived for 3 more years after Isaac's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. She spent her final days in the old cabin, where it had all begun. Looking out at the land, she and her 2 husbands had worked so hard to build. She told stories to her great-grandchildren about 2 loves, 2 good men, and a Christmas blizzard that changed everything. When Sarah Whitfield Thornton died at the age of 78, she was buried between Thomas and Isaac, her 2 great loves. The headstone read, "Beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she knew how to grieve and she knew how to love, and she did both with her whole heart." The family legacy continued for generations. The ranch stayed in the family, passed down through the years. The old cabin was preserved and eventually became a historical site, a testament to the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds. And every Christmas Eve, whatever Thornton still lived in Montana would gather at the cabin, light a fire in the old hearth, and remember the story of the widow who was grieving alone, and the cowboy who knocked and brought her light and laughter, and the love that bloomed between them against all odds. It was a story of second chances, of hope in the darkness, of the courage it takes to open your heart again after it has been shattered, of the truth that love is not finite, that the heart can hold both grief and joy, memory and hope, past and present. It was a story of Christmas miracles and Montana blizzards, and 2 souls who found each other when they both needed it most. And it was a story that reminded everyone who heard it that it is never too late to begin again. That life can surprise you with joy when you least expect it. That sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the strangest packages, like a frozen cowboy stumbling through your door on the loneliest night of your life. That love is always worth the risk, always worth the fear, always worth opening your heart one more time. The Thornton family flourished for over 100 years in Montana, building on the foundation that Sarah and Isaac laid. And though the details of daily life changed with the times, the core truth remained the same. Love heals. Love perseveres. Love is worth fighting for. And sometimes, love knocks on your door during a blizzard and changes everything forever.